Welcome back to Paranormal Directive 13. I am your host, Matt, and today we are back in West Pittston, Pennsylvania. Back with Jack Smurl at 330 Chase Street in the middle of a multi-year-long attack on his family. Now, I know I said I'd have this part 2 out on Saturday, and it's actually Sunday, but hey, you're still getting 2 full episodes in 1 week. We left part 1 with the Smurl family desperate for answers in the middle of ever-escalating attacks on the family. They were tired, broken, and out of options. So they reached out to 2 of the most controversial figures in all of paranormal history, Ed and Lorraine Warren. If you've watched a horror movie in the last 15 years, you know these 2, even if you don't know that you know them. The Conjuring, that's them. That's their case files up on the screen. Annabelle, the creepy doll, that's their museum. That's a doll that supposedly sat in a glass case in their house in Connecticut. The Amityville Horror, they were there. The Enfield Poltergeist, them. For about 40 years, if there was a famous American haunting, sooner or later, Ed and Lorraine Warren showed up at the front door with a tape recorder and a camera and a theory. Ed called himself a demonologist, said he was one of the only non-ordained ones the church recognized, which is a claim people argue about to this day. Lorraine said she was a clairvoyant and a medium, and that she could feel and see, sometimes hear, the things the rest of us can't. And by the time they pulled up to Chase Street in January of 1986, in the dead of winter, snow banked up against the porch, they were already legends. Or, depending entirely on who you ask, they were already very, very good at this.
New England summers don't exactly ease you in. 1 minute the windows are open, the next your apartment feels unbearable. Well, meet Windmill Air. Windmill window ACs are sleek, they're quiet, and cool your space fast without the bulky eyesore. Rated the #1 easiest AC to install, Windmill lets you adjust temperatures right from your phone and, unlike traditional units, cools your room more evenly like central air. Shop Windmill online at windmillair.com or pick up an AC at your nearest Target or Home Depot. Windmill, modern air care your room deserves.
The family hadn't gone to them first, and I want to make that clear because it matters to who these people were. The Smurls went to the Catholic Church first. That was their instinct. They were devout people. Jack with his holy water, Mary with her rosary. When something's wrong, you call the church. So priests came. There were blessings. Some accounts name a Father Kersiak, a Monsignor Kane, doing what they could, walking the rooms with holy water and prayer, and for a little while, maybe things would quiet. And then the activity would come back, worse, like it had been waiting out the prayers the way you wait out a rainstorm. So the family, out of options, out of road, picked up the phone and called the Warrens. And the Warrens walked into that house, and by their account, immediately felt it. Ed claimed that the temperature dropped 30 degrees in a matter of seconds the moment he crossed certain thresholds. Not measured on any instrument, mind you, just felt, just claimed. He said he saw the black mass. He said he watched a mattress jump up off a bed. Lorraine, the sensitive one, the one who was supposed to feel these things, said the place was crawling with it. That there wasn't one presence in that house, there were several, and they were old, and at least one of them was not and had never been human. And then they delivered their diagnosis. And this is the thing, this right here, that turned the Smurl Haunting from a sad local story into a legend that'll outlive all of us. The Warrens declared that 330 Chase Street was home to not 1, not 2, but 4 distinct entities. Number 1, the spirit of an old woman. Harmless, they said. A human ghost, somebody who lived and died in that old house back before the Smurls, just lingering. Number 2 was the spirit of a young girl. This one was not harmless. It was violent, capable of moving things, breaking things, and throwing things. Number 3 was the spirit of a man who had died, they said violently and painfully, on or near the property decades back. And number 4, the big one, the reason for everything, an ancient, powerful, non-human demon. And the Warrens' claim, and this is the part that reframes the entire case, was that this demon was the puppet master. That it wasn't doing the dirty work itself, that it was using the 3 human ghosts like tools, like puppets, pushing them, forcing them to manifest, to scratch and shake and frighten, and that the whole point of the campaign, the entire reason for all of it, was to wear the Smurls down, to exhaust them, to break their spirit and crack their faith, the way you'd soften metal before you bend it, to get them tired enough and frightened enough and isolated enough that one of them, most likely Jack, could be taken over completely, a full demonic possession. That's the Warrens' theory. And whatever you think of the Warrens, just keep that in mind, because it's the first time anybody put a strategy to all of this. The first time anybody said, it's not random, it's a plan, and it has a goal. Ed said the demon attacked him personally. He said it threw him 10 feet across a room. And here's the detail he leaned on. Even with a police officer standing right there in the house for safety, even with a witness whose whole job is to not believe things, he talked about gossamer threads. This fine, smoky, ectoplasmic residue the thing supposedly left behind, hanging in the air like cobwebs. It is a hell of a story. It's genuinely frightening, vivid, and complete, airtight story. Every loose end is tied off. Every event is explained. And that is exactly the problem. A lot of serious people, investigators, journalists, other paranormal researchers, people who actually believe in hauntings, have looked hard at the Warrens' entire career and concluded that what Ed and Lorraine really were was a brand. A very effective, very profitable brand. And the argument goes like this. The Warrens had a formula. They'd find a family in genuine distress, and the distress was usually real. That's the thing. These families were really suffering. And they'd diagnose a demon. Always a demon. Always the big, dramatic, cinematic version. They'd bring in the press, and within months, there'd be a book deal, and somewhere down the line, a movie. And in the Smurl case, that's exactly the sequence that happened, beat for beat. Within months of the Warrens arriving, the family went public, and a local journalist named Robert Curran got a book deal. And that book, The Haunted, One Family's Nightmare, came out. And eventually, there was a TV movie, and now, decades later, here comes a Conjuring film. The money flowed. The skeptics point out, dryly, that around the Warrens, the money always flowed. And then there's an even nastier little detail, and I have to give this to you guys. In the Enfield poltergeist case, a different haunting over in England, someone in the host family reportedly overheard Ed Warren mutter to Lorraine, and I quote, "We could make a good one out of this." Make. Like the haunting was raw material, like it was a project, lumber for the next book. So, which Warrens are real? The devoted couple who spent their whole lives walking calmly into rooms that everyone else was running out of? Who showed up again and again to sit with terrified families nobody else would believe? Or the showman who learned that broken people make a good story and turned that pain into box office over and over for 40 years? For me, it's the latter of the two. But this case gets murkier from here. We haven't even gotten to the basement yet. If the Warrens brought the theory, this next man brought the war. His name was Bishop Robert Fidelis McKenna. And let's explain who he was. McKenna was a real Catholic bishop. That part is true. He wore the robes, he'd been properly consecrated, he performed the old rites, the Latin ones, the ones that go back centuries, the ones that sound like the church bringing out its oldest and heaviest weapons. He looked, in every single way, the habit, the cape, the crucifix, the dead language rolling off his tongue, like the institution's frontline soldier against the devil himself. But here is the catch, and it's a big one. McKenna was a sedevacantist. That's a traditionalist who broke with the modern Catholic Church, who broadly rejected the legitimacy of the recent popes, and as a result, he'd effectively been cut off from Rome. The mainstream church did not recognize his authority, and, this is crucial, they specifically declared the exorcisms he was about to perform to be unsanctioned and invalid. Not approved, not blessed, not official, in the eyes of the actual Roman Catholic Church. The man going down into that basement to do battle with a demon was operating entirely on his own. So you've got this fascinating, deeply unsettling situation. The official Catholic Church, the Diocese of Scranton, they look at the Smurl case and their position was, let's call it, careful. They didn't laugh it off. They sent priests. They took it seriously enough to investigate. By some accounts, a Monsignor Clark actually slept in the house for 2 nights and experienced absolutely nothing. Silence. An ordinary, if drafty, old house. And in the end, the diocese said something genuinely remarkable. They said the Smurls were telling the truth about something. They acknowledged, on the record, that this family was genuinely suffering, genuinely experiencing something that was real to them. But the church would not confirm it was a demon. They drew a hard line. We believe you're suffering. We will not tell you what's causing it. So you have this standoff. You have the mainstream church with all its centuries of authority and all its caution saying, no, we can't call this a demon. And you have a renegade bishop the church had disowned, a man Rome no longer recognized, saying, yes, it is a demon, and I'll go down there myself. And on a sweltering August day, he did just that. August 22nd, 1986. It is one of those heavy, breathless Pennsylvania summer days, the air so thick you wear it. But the place where this happens is the basement of 330 Chase Street. And I need you to come down there with me because this is the heart of the whole episode and you should not be allowed to listen to it from a safe distance. The stairs first. Old wooden cellar stairs. No backs to them, the kind where something could reach through from underneath. You go down and the temperature changes. That earthen cool of a cellar. And the light gets bad. Just a bare bulb or two throwing more shadow than light. The ceiling is low enough that a tall man has to mind his head. Low enough that you feel the weight of the whole house pressing down on the space. The walls are rough stone, weeping a little with damp. And the smell, coal dust, rust, standing water that's been standing too long, and under all of it, getting stronger, sulfur. That rotten egg reek is thick down here. It coats the back of your throat. The air feels used. This is a stone box, underground, with one way out. Those stairs. And that's where they choose to do it. Or that's where the thing was strongest, and so that's where they had to do it. Now, fill it with people. McKenna's down there in his white Dominican habit and his black cape. Just imagine that, the white and black of him in that filthy cellar like a chess piece dropped into a coal bin. He's holding a heavy silver crucifix and a vessel of holy water. Behind him, Ed Warren with a tape recorder running, red light on, reels turning, trying to catch the unprovable on magnetic tape. Lorraine's off to the side, pressed back against the cold stone, her eyes moving across the dark corners where the bulb doesn't reach. Because she's the one who's supposed to see it coming. And Jack is there. Jack Smurl, the man at the center of all of it, standing near the bottom of the stairs. The sick man, the tired man, the one they all believe the thing wants. Nobody's talking. You can hear the water drip. You can hear the reels of Ed's recorder. You can hear 5 people breathing in a stone room that's too hot and smells like the inside of the earth. And McKenna begins. The old words, the Leonine exorcism. We cast you out, every unclean spirit. His voice low and steady and certain, the Latin rolling off the stone and coming back at them, doubled from the corners. He's not asking, he's commanding. This is a man who has decided, against his own church, there's something down here and that he is going to make it leave. And for a moment, there's nothing. Just the voice and the water and the breathing and the heat. And then, by the accounts of the people who were down there, a sound starts to come up out of the floor. Not a growl, but a hum. A deep, low, vibrating hum. Low enough, they said, that you didn't so much hear it as you did feel it. In your teeth and in your eardrums. Down in your chest behind the sternum. A pressure. A frequency that doesn't belong to anything a house can do. It rises up through the soles of their feet and from somewhere underneath the floor, from somewhere underneath the basement, which should be the bottom, which should be the end. And the floorboards over their heads, the kitchen floor where the fixture fell, where Shannon bled, start to shake. Dust sifting down through the bare bulb light. McKenna doesn't stop. He raises the crucifix and his voice climbs over the hum, the Latin sharper now, faster. And then, they said, the dark in the far corner of that basement got darker and thicker. The shadows where the light couldn't reach began to gather, to pull inward, to take on a density. And it rose and it built until it stood in the corner of that low cellar as a shape. They described it the same way, all of them. 8 feet tall. Too tall for the room. Its head should have been up through the joist, and somehow it wasn't. Somehow the room held it. A column of shifting black smoke that had weight to it, that had intent to it, that was not drifting but standing, the way a person stands. And up near the top, where a face would be, 2 pinpricks of dull red light, looking at them. The temperature crashed. In the dead heat of an August basement, their breath began to fog. White plumes in front of 5 faces, the same as that kitchen in April, the same signature, the same calling card. I am here. And the crucifix was raised against it. The holy water was ready. The oldest weapons of the oldest church were in the room and pointed at the thing in the corner. And the thing did not run from the cross. It charged. They said a wave of force came across that basement. It threw Ed Warren backward, off his feet, but it did not go for the bishop. It did not go for the man with the cross, the man with the holy water, the man speaking the words of God. It swept past McKenna entirely, ignored him like he was furniture, like the prayers and the crucifix and the centuries of church authority were beneath its notice. And it slammed straight into Jack Smurl's chest. It knew. That's the thing that people down there walked away believing, whether it's true or not. It knew exactly who it had come for. Not the bishop with the weapons, the sick, tired man by the stairs. The one who had been working for years. The one it had picked back when the worst thing in the house was a stain on a carpet. It went through a room full of people, past the one man armed to stop it, and hit its target. The way it had always known where the family was weakest. And Jack's eyes rolled back, his spine arched, bent backward at an angle a spine is not built to bend, and out of him, out of this quiet production manager from the gum plant, came a scream. And everyone down in that basement said the same thing about that scream, in almost the same words, that it was not human, that no person makes that sound, that it came up out of him from somewhere that wasn't Jack. That's the account. That's what they said happened in that basement on August 22nd, 1986. Now, there is no footage of this. None. The tape Ed Warren was running has never been independently forensically verified by anyone neutral. We have his word that it captured something, and Ed Warren's word is exactly the thing in dispute. And the only witnesses down in that stone room were the family, the Warrens, and a bishop the church had thrown out. Every single one of them, you could argue, deeply, personally, financially invested in there being a demon in that basement. And skeptics look at that scene and see something very different from a possession. They see suggestible, exhausted, sleep-starved, terrified people crammed into a sweltering, low-ceilinged, sulfur-filled hole in the ground. primed by weeks and months of being told a demon was coming for them, watching a charismatic man in dramatic robes chant in a dead language by the light of a bare bulb. Of course they felt something down there. Of course the air seemed to thicken. You'd feel it. I would feel it. Put me in that basement under those conditions and I'll fog the air with my own breath and swear I saw it move. But what stops me, the people who were down there that day went to their graves saying it was real. Not one of them ever took it back. And for a while, all of this stayed inside that house. A private nightmare sealed up in a duplex on a quiet street known only to the family and the priests and the Warrens. And then, in the middle of August 1986, it didn't stay private anymore. And in a way, that was its own kind of horror. A different kind, a daylight kind. The Associated Press and the local paper, the Wilkes-Barre Times-Leader, ran the story. The Smurl family, at the urging of the Warrens, it should be said that was the Warrens' instinct, get it public, went on record. And the moment it hit the wire, the moment it went national, it detonated. Chase Street, this quiet little working class block in a quiet little town, where people knew each other and minded their own, became a circus overnight. Reporters were everywhere, TV trucks lining the curb, cables running across lawns, and crowds. People drove in from all over the region, from out of state, just to stand on the sidewalk and stare at the house, to point, hoping to see a curtain twitch, hoping to catch a ghost on the porch, a shadow in an upstairs window, anything they could tell the people back home. 330 Chase Street became a tourist destination, a roadside attraction, a demon house, right there on a street where 4 little girls were trying to do their homework and a sick man was trying to sleep. And the neighbors. This is where it gets genuinely sad. Some of them backed the family up. Some said they'd heard things too. Screams from inside the house when the Smurls were away on camping trips, when nobody was supposed to be home. Lights moving in empty windows. But others, longtime neighbors who lived directly across the street, who'd watched that house for years, said they never saw or heard a single strange thing. Ever. Not once. And some of the neighbors got angry. They decided the Smurls were faking it, putting on a show, making a spectacle of the whole block and dragging the neighborhood's name through the mud, doing it for money and attention. And it got ugly, genuinely ugly. There are accounts of people throwing bricks at the house, through the windows. This family says they're being tortured in their own home by something out of hell. And the response from a chunk of their own community is to throw bricks through their windows and call them liars and frauds on the local news. So you look at the position they're actually in. They're fighting on every front at once. There's the thing inside the house, in the walls, in the bed. There are the reporters camped on the lawn. There are the strangers gawking on the sidewalk. There are the neighbors who hate them and want them gone. And there's the church that won't back them up, that says, we believe you're suffering, but we won't say why. And there's a watching national public split right down the middle between these poor people and what a scam. They had no allies. Not really. They had each other, and they had the Warrens, who, whatever else you want to say about the Warrens, at least showed up. Everyone else was either gawking at them, doubting them, or throwing things. There was one stretch of relief. Late in 1986, the local parish, regular priests, regular parishioners, the actual community, the people of the place, came together and held a third round of prayer and ritual in the house. Not the renegade bishop, not the famous demonologist, just the neighbors in the parish doing what people of faith do. And the family said it worked for a little while. About 3 months of peace. 3 months where the house was just a house, where you could walk downstairs in the dark, where the kids could turn the lights off and sleep. And then it came back. Because of course it did. That was the pattern, wasn't it? The prayers would work, and then the thing would wait out the prayers the way it always had, the way it waited out Father Karsiak, the way it waited out the blessings, the way it waited out everything. 3 months of hope, and then the cold in some room one ordinary night. And they were right back in it. Now, we have spent a long time inside the family's experience, down in it in the dark with them, feeling it the way they felt it. So now I owe you the other side, the lights on version, because there is a serious, thorough, science-based case that nothing supernatural happened in that house at all. Nothing. And it deserves to be heard with the same respect and the same weight we gave the terror. The skeptics build this on 3 legs, like a stool. And here's the thing. Any one leg, on its own, you can maybe kick out. But when you stand all 3 of them up next to each other, and you see how they hold each other up, it's a lot. So leg 1 is the brain. Now we already talked about Jack, the meningitis, the brain scarring, the hydrocephalus, the shunt that, like all shunts, can fail. And here's what the skeptics add to it, and it's a part that makes the hair on your neck stand up for an entirely different reason. That kind of brain damage, especially scarring in the temporal lobe, which is exactly the region that takes a hit in cases like Jack's, is clinically, well documentedly, known to produce a very specific menu of symptoms. Auditory hallucinations, hearing screams, whispers, voices, growls that nobody else can hear. Olfactory hallucinations. There is even a clinical name for this one, cacosmia, where the patient suddenly, vividly smells rot, or decay, or sulfur that is not there. It is a known thing. The brain manufactures a stench and visual distortions. Seeing dark masses, shifting shapes, shadows that move in the corner of the room. Now, let's list that back. Whispers, growls, the smell of sulfur and rot, coming and going with no source. Black masses, shadow shapes at the edge of sight. That is the entire Smurl Haunting, the whole catalog of it, described item for item by a neurologist with a straight face and with the word demon never once coming up. And the assaults, the most extreme, the most disturbing, the most private claims in the whole case, those map almost perfectly onto sleep paralysis combined with hypnagogic hallucination. We touched on it earlier, but this is the full weight of it. The waking up unable to move, the crushing weight on the chest, that's a known documented feature, the chest pressure. The malevolent figure in the dark room, the sense of a presence, of being watched, of being touched. Humans have reported this exact constellation in exact detail across every culture and every century of recorded history. That's why we have all those old words for it. The incubus, the succubus, the old hag who rides your chest in the night. Those words exist because this happens to people, regularly, to perfectly healthy people, let alone to a man with Jack's neurology and a woman as exhausted and terrified as Janet. And here's the cruel part the skeptics insist on, and they're right to insist on this. Knowing the name doesn't make it less terrifying when it's happening to you. It feels completely, unshakably end of the world real. Naming it does not strip away 1 ounce of the horror. It just moves the horror from the corner of the room to inside your own head. Now, leg 2 of the stool. This one I find genuinely fascinating, and it's a little unsettling in its own right, because it's pretty neat. West Pittston sits on top of the northern Pennsylvania anthracite coal field, and underneath that whole town, underneath Chase Street, underneath the Smurl's basement, underneath the spot where McKenna stood enchanted, is a hollowed-out labyrinth of abandoned mine shafts. They dug it all out a century ago, hauled the coal up, and then the mines closed. And the shafts down there filled up with groundwater, and the cracks above them started to do what hollowed-out ground does. It stinks, it shifts, it cracks. They call it mining subsidence. And it was so bad in that town in the 30s and 40s that they had to permanently close schools, actual school buildings declared structurally unsafe and condemned because the earth underneath them wouldn't hold still. So now, let's run every single paranormal event back through that lens and see what happens. The banging and popping and cracking inside the walls. That's the sound of an old wood frame house being slowly, constantly twisted by the earth. Joints under stress and nails pulling, timber complaining. doors that open and close on their own, door frames warping out a square, millimeter by millimeter, as the foundation moves, until a door that hung true last year swings on its own this year. The 30 solder joints that wouldn't hold, even for a master welder. A plumbing system being slowly wrenched and torqued apart by ground movement faster than any man can solder it back. And the smell of sulfur, of rot, of rotten eggs and decay. Hydrogen sulfide. Sewer gas. Venting up through the cracked pipes and a cracked foundation from the flooded, rotting mine workings below. Hydrogen sulfide smells exactly like rotten eggs. And the kicker, the part that ties leg 2 right back into leg 1, hydrogen sulfide is neurotoxic. You breathe a little of it over time in a poorly ventilated old house, and you get headaches, nausea, disorientation, and vivid hallucinations. A house that physically shifts and groans and pops, all on its own, around the clock. Toxic gas seeping up from a drowned mine that makes people inside see and smell things that aren't there. And then layer on the electrical, a decrepit 1896 wiring system throwing surges, and there's your exploding TV, there's the appliances. And it's generating strong electromagnetic fields. And there is a real body of research suggesting that strong EMFs at close range can affect the temporal lobe and produce exactly the symptoms the family reported. That feeling of dread, the feeling of a presence, the feeling of being watched, even the physical sensation of being touched by something that isn't there. Now, leg 3. Now we have psychology, which is the leg that ties the other two together and bears the most weight. Because this family had been through hell before the house ever did a single thing. They lost everything in a flood, watched it float away. They sank their last dollar into a money pit they then could not escape. They were packed in tight, 3 generations under 2 roofs, sharing 1 wall, 4 kids, no money, no exit. Janet was begging to leave. Jack couldn't afford to take her. That is a sustained, grinding, years-long existential stress that almost no human being could withstand without something cracking. And under stress like that, in a deeply religious household, steeped in the language of sin and the devil and damnation, with a charismatic authority showing up to tell them, with total confidence, yes, it's a demon, I can see it, you get what psychologists call shared belief, or in the older, eerier language, folie à plaisir, a madness of several, a contagious conviction. One person's terror becomes the household's terror, becomes the household's shared reality, until they're all confirming it for each other, all seeing the same shadow, all hearing the same grunt, each one's fear feeding the next one's. The skeptics also note, more harshly, that a teenager in a house like that, someone like Dawn growing up, suffocating in all that tension, might consciously or unconsciously produce some of the activity. The objects that vanish and reappear, the figures, not out of malice, but out of being a kid drowning in a house full of fear, reaching in some sort of way for the thing the family had organized its entire emotional life around. And then the skeptics put down their closing argument, which is the single hardest fact for believers to answer. And they save it for last because it's the one that's hardest to answer. After the Smurls left, a woman named Deborah Owens moved into 330 Chase Street, the exact unit, not the grandparents' side, but 330, the same rooms, the same bedrooms where the family said they'd been choked and crushed and assaulted and watched, the same basement where the bishop fought the 8-foot shape. And Deborah Owens lived there and experienced nothing. Nothing at all. No cold that came first, no sulfur, no grunting in the walls, no shadow shapes, no weight on the chest, no demon, an ordinary old house on an ordinary street. And that's the question that kind of hangs there, isn't it? If the house was haunted, if the house was the problem, the bricks and the plaster and the ground underneath, then why did it stop the instant the Smurls walked out the front door? Why did it have no interest whatsoever in the next person who slept in that bedroom? But if it was the family, Jack's brain, the shared terror, the years of unbearable stress, the gas in the air, then this is exactly what you'd expect. Precisely this. The haunting moves out when the haunted move out. Because the haunting was never in the walls. It was in the people. And it left when they did. The way a fever leaves a body. That's the case against it. And to be honest, it's a strong one. It might be the strongest skeptical case in this whole show's entire catalog. Every leg holds. And yet, this is Paranormal Directive 13. We don't stop at the edge of the map. We go past it, out into the dark water. Because the Smurl case has spawned an entire underground of theories. Some of them put forward in total seriousness by people who've studied it for decades. Some of them cooked up at 2 a.m. on a forum by somebody who couldn't sleep. And all of them are a little bit irresistible. So this is speculative stuff. The maybe. Most of it has little to no hard evidence behind it. Some of it has none at all. But it's part of the legend, woven right into it. Theory 1. The coal mines. The skeptics use them to explain sewer gas and shifting foundations, the rational version. The Fringe uses them for something a great deal bigger. And theory goes like this. When those mines were dug, and especially when they collapsed and flooded in the 30s and 40s, they didn't just crack the earth physically. They tore open something else. Something spiritual, like a gateway. The idea is that the deep ground under the Susquehanna Valley had old significance long before the miners ever got there. Pre-colonial ritual sites, early occult practices, and that hollowing it out and then caving it in punched a hole straight through between this world and somewhere else. And up through that hole, up through the black, flooded, drowned shafts, in no hurry at all, something old and patient climbed. Through the dark, through the water, up through the cracks in the rock, until one day it reached the foundation of an 1896 duplex and found a family living on top of it. Now, theory 2. In traditional demonology, the old framework, the one McKenna would have worked from, a true infestation usually needs an invitation. A door has to be opened first from this side, through witchcraft or ritual, through some old act of terrible violence that stains the land and leaves it open. Demons in this telling don't just wander in. They're let in or called in or anchored in, and then they wait. And the rumor that floats around the Smurl case, and remember, the case itself flagged that there were old whispers about that property, unexplained police calls going back to the early 1900s, scraping noises reported when the place sat empty between tenants. The rumor is that some previous occupant, way back, long before the Smurls, practiced the dark arts in that house. They did something down in that basement, opened a door, and bound something to the structure itself. And it lay there, dormant, for decades, ignoring renter after renter who came and went, ordinary people the thing had no use for, until the Smurls arrived. A fiercely religious family, 4 daughters hitting their teen years. All that devotion and all that young energy pouring into the place at once. And something about that specific combination, the faith and the children and the life of it, woke the sleeping thing up, lit it like a pilot light. And then theory 3 is the darkest one, and it reframes the assaults completely. In this view, the succubus and the incubus aren't metaphors, and they aren't hallucinations, and they aren't sleep paralysis. They're a feeding strategy. The theory holds that a high-order demon has no body of its own and can't touch the physical world directly. It's starving in a sense. So it manifests in these intimate, violating forms for a specific, horrible reason. To harvest something. The raw energy that pours off a human being in moments of extreme terror and forced, intimate violation. They call it fear energy. It's essentially almost like adrenochrome that we've been hearing about from like the Epstein shit. And in this telling, the assault was never the goal. The assault was the meal. And each one built a bridge a little deeper into the victim, bypassing their faith, anchoring the thing a little closer to the soul, driving them slowly and deliberately toward total possession. Or toward something even simpler, toward just giving up, toward a family so hollowed out and exhausted and ashamed that they'd stop fighting altogether. Which, you will notice, lines right up with what the Warrens said the whole campaign was for. Wear them down, soften them, and take them. Now it's grim, and there's no way to test that, but it's the kind of idea that once it's in your head, makes you rehear everything that came before it a few degrees colder. The patience of it, the targeting, the way it always seemed to know where the family was softest. And then there's the modern internet layer, which is its own strange thing entirely, and it's worth a minute. If you go on Reddit right now, go on the paranormal forums, and the Smurl case is alive and arguing with itself this very second. Half the threads are people genuinely creeped out, trading the worst details back and forth at 1 a.m, scaring each other. The other half are people repeating the brain surgery skepticism, the sewer gas skepticism, calling it a stress case or a flat-out hoax, getting frustrated at the believers. The case has basically become a permanent looping debate, almost a fixed feature of the landscape, where every new generation that finds it relitigates the whole thing from scratch, makes all the same arguments, lands in all the same places. Which, when you think about it, is its own strange kind of immortality. The Smurls are still up at 3 a.m, arguing with the world decades later. The haunting never really ended, it just moved online. So now, how does it end? Because it does end, sort of. The way real things end. Not with a bang, not with a final confrontation, but with a family that just couldn't take it anymore, quietly loading a truck. In 1988, the Smurl family packed up and moved back to Wilkes-Barre. After everything, the press, the bricks, the exorcisms, the Warrens, the bishop, the years, they just left. They gave up the comeback house, the do-over, the second chance they'd bled for after the flood. They walked away from it, and by the accounts, when they left, it stopped. The activity, whatever it was, wherever it came from, ended. They got their nights back, they got the lights off. And then, as we said, Deborah Owens moved into 330 and lived there in total peace. The demon house became just a house. A later owner reportedly had so much trouble even renting it out because of the stigma, the reputation, and the gawkers, but the demon, if there was one, did not stay to greet the new tenants. It had no further business there, or it had never been there at all. Jack Smurl passed away in June of 2017. He was 75 years old, and he didn't die screaming in a basement, he didn't get dragged off by anything, he didn't come to any of the ends of the legend might want for him. He died of complications from long-term diabetes in LaPorte, Pennsylvania. An old man at the end of a long, hard, painful life that had asked far too much of one body. He never recanted, not once in all those years. Through all the skepticism, all the medical explanations laid out in front of him, all the people calling him brain damaged or a liar or a stooge, Jack Smurl believed, to the very end, that what happened to his family was real. He took it to his grave intact. Janet, by recent accounts, is still living in LaPorte. The daughters, Dawn, Heather, Karen, and Shannon, the little girls who grew up inside all of this, for whom this was childhood, they grew up and built private lives, mostly out of the spotlight, which they have every right to do. Though one of them, Karen, one of the twins, one of the little ones who was right there as a child when the fixture came down on the kitchen table, has reportedly done some paranormal work herself over the years. Make of that what you will, a child raised inside the most famous haunting in Pennsylvania, grown up to go looking in the dark on purpose. And then, decades later, the story got dug up all over again. By the internet and by Hollywood. The YouTube duo Sam and Colby, who do these big overnight investigation videos for millions of subscribers. My sister is a huge fan of them, and so is my daughter. They did a piece on the Chase Street Demon House. And the paranormal community caught them in something pretty damning. because they didn't film 330, the actual unit, the one where everything supposedly happened, the one that matters. They filmed 328, the grandparents' side, the side that, by nearly every account, was always quiet, was never the center of any of it. And they blurred out the house numbers, and they stood in random rooms and pointed and said, "This is where the light fell, this is where it happened," and a unit where, historically, basically nothing happened at all. The community was not kind about it, and they were right not to be, because it's a perfect little parable for this entire subject, isn't it? The appetite for the story will always outrun the truth of it. People want the demons so badly, they'll point at the wrong house and call it haunted. And now the Smurls are headed back to the big screen, woven into the Conjuring franchise. The very same machine the Warrens helped build all those years ago, starting in a sweltering basement in West Pittston with a tape recorder running. The case that began as a struggling church-going family's private, agonizing hell is now intellectual property, a line item, a title in a cinematic universe. There's something fitting about that in a cold sort of way, the Warrens' formula completing its final loop. And there's something genuinely sad about it. So here we are, at the end of it. If you think this was real, here is your best ground to stand on. And it's solid ground. A welder, a man who works metal for a living, who solders for a living, Jack's own father, found claw marks gouged down into porcelain and watched 30 perfect solder joints fail all at once, and never had any answer for it. A mainstream Catholic church, an institution with every conceivable bureaucratic and theological reason to say nothing to see here, go home, instead said on the record that this family was telling the truth about something. Multiple people in that basement, including investigators who claimed to have seen everything there was to see, independently described the same impossible 8-foot shape and the same impossible inhuman scream. And the family gained money and fame, yes, that's true. The skeptics are right about that. But they also got bricks thrown through their windows and lost their home and earned a lifetime of being called liars and lunatics and brain-damaged frauds on the national news. That's a strange thing to volunteer your 4 daughters for if you're only in it for a payday.
Introducing America's Workforce Academy, built by Meta. Paid training, a job, and a path to America's future. Because the future is for everyone. Learn more at meta.com/America's Workforce Academy.
And if you think this wasn't real, here's your best ground, and it's just as solid as the believer side. The central witness to the worst of it had a brain that was, through pure medical fact and no fault of his own, almost custom built to produce these exact hallucinations. The whispers, the smells, the shapes, the weight on the chest. The house sat on top of toxic, shifting, gas-venting, mine-hollow ground that cleanly explains nearly every smell and sound and crack and failed pipe in the whole account. The most extreme events, the assaults, the basement, the possession, have no footage, no forensics, no neutral witness, only the testimony of people with a story to sell and a man in robes the church had publicly disowned. The timeline of the serious activity conveniently grew from about 18 months into 13 years the moment the Warrens arrived to shape the narrative. And the single cleanest fact of all, the second the family walked out the door, every bit of it stopped, and the next human being who slept in that exact bedroom, in that exact house, felt absolutely nothing. And here's the thing, both of those are true. That's the whole problem. Both columns are completely full, and you can't really make them cancel each other out no matter how long you sit there and stare at them, no matter which way you want it to come out. The claw marks are still gouged into the porcelain, and Deborah Owens still slept like a baby in that bedroom. Both of those facts get to be real at the same time. So where I land, and it's not on demon or no demon, forget that for a second. Because what every single person agrees on, The believers, the skeptics, the Warrens, the bishop, the cautious church, the neighbors who hated them, all of them. Something happened to the Smurl family. A family went into that house whole, devout, hardworking, hopeful, rebuilding after a flood took everything. And they came out the other end, years later, hollowed out, tortured by something. And maybe that something climbed up out of a flooded coal mine in the dark. Or maybe it grew in the cracks of a damaged man's brain and spread person to person through the people who loved him most, in a house where the gas itself made you see things. Or maybe, and this is the one that I circle back to a lot, maybe it was both. Both at once, feeding each other. A sick man in a sick house on sick ground, each one making the other worse, until there was no line left between them at all. That is the Smurl Haunting, 330 Chase Street, West Pittston, Pennsylvania. And I want to hear from you guys on this one, because this is one of those cases that splits a room right down the middle, every single time. And I genuinely want to know where you land after sitting in that house with me for, almost 2 hours now. So, we're going to go to the directive rating scale and tell me, on a scale of 1 to 5 directives, how strong is this one? Directive 1, there is a perfectly good explanation and we all know it. Old house, sick man, bad gas, case closed. And a directive 5 is, I am not sleeping with the lights off tonight and I'm going to check on my dog. And if you think this one might be the one that hits all the way out to directive 13, off the scale, off the map, out in the place we only talk about in whispers, then you tell me that too. You tell me why. Build the case. Go into the comments, get into it with each other the way the internet's been doing with this one for years. Make your argument. That's the whole point of this show. For me, I'm going to give this a directive 3. Something happened to the Smurls. Whether that was a demon or Jack's brain or whatever mass hallucinations spreading throughout the house, I don't know. The part that gives me pause on the skeptic side, where they say that it was gas leaking into the house because of settling of the house on the coal mines. There's 2 parts to that don't sit right with me. One, the 30 pipe joints. How much would a house have to move almost instantly after soldering 30 pipes for all of them to break? I can go down to my basement right now, grab a pipe, and wiggle it around a good couple inches, and it's not going to leak. So for that to be caused by the house moving from the ground twisting and moving, that would have to be a pretty extreme shift to break all 30 welds at the same time. On top of that, the gas causing hallucinations. So if this house is built on a coal mine that's filling gas under the floor of the house, okay, fine, that makes sense. That can cause hallucinations. Why did Deborah Owens not hallucinate from the gas? The house wasn't moved. The mine didn't stop producing gas. So if it was strong enough to do something to this entire family, is Deborah Owens just immune to the toxic gas causing hallucinations? I highly doubt it. So that's where I give pause to the skeptic side. Those 2 don't line up for me. If you have a rational explanation to explain those to me, please let me know. Because that's where I lean more towards it was something supernatural in this house. I don't think it was a demon. I think Ed and Lorraine are frauds who are out there to make money and just sensationalize people's trauma. That seems to be kind of their MO. I did a whole episode on the original Conjuring house and how the true story is nothing even close to what their story in the movie is. So I think they dramatized the whole thing. But I do think there was something in this house. I believe in ghosts. I believe in spirits and the supernatural and all that. That's why I do this show, because I believe in most of the stuff in certain situations. I don't believe every haunting is real, but I do think the Smurls were haunted by something. And I think that's why Deborah Owens wasn't haunted, because I do think a lot of times hauntings and spirits feed off the specific energy of whoever's in the house being haunted. It's not always just the building itself haunts everyone who's there. I think sometimes there is a specific case to it. Why the Smurls? I don't know. Maybe like we said earlier, they could sense, you feel like the weakness in Jack and the energy of the daughters, and I don't know. But I think there was something in that house. So if this episode got under your skin tonight, do me a favor. Share it with the one friend in your life who insists none of this is real. The skeptic in your life. And see what they say. Let them argue with it. Let them try to explain away the claw marks in the porcelain. Let them try to explain why it stopped the day the family left. Both of them at once. And see what they do. And while they're explaining that, have them go on whatever podcast app they use and leave a rating. Because you can give me 5 stars and tell me I'm an idiot because I think it's a ghost. Or you can give me 5 stars and tell me that you think I'm a genius and amazing because you agree with me that it's a ghost. Either way, go rate the show 5 stars. It would be amazing. It would be great. I would love it. And it would mean so much to me and the show. If you want to go one step deeper with us, please go support the show on Patreon, patreon.com/paranormaldirective13, where for just $5 a month, you can get access to episodes ad-free. You can get some bonus content when I'm finally able to put more up there. There are some minisodes on there right now. And you can just help support the show and help us grow and, reach new audiences and do more with what we're doing. And that would be absolutely amazing. Of course, find us on the social medias, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, all at Paranormal Directive 13. I'll be putting some of the case details from tonight, photos, dates, all that. And we can go and argue on there about everything. And again, thank you so much for listening today. I hope you enjoyed this change up from the aliens and conspiracies we've been doing. I really wanted to get back into the rest of the realm of paranormal. I'm a big alien guy. Aliens are my thing. Aliens and cryptids. So sometimes the ghosts, sometimes the hauntings get, kind of put on the back burner. And I wanted to do a good one and get this out there for you guys. So I hope you enjoyed it. And remember, if your dog starts staring at the corner of the room where there's nothing, where there's clearly, obviously nothing, maybe just go sleep in a different room.